They say photographs don't lie, but in America's past, many truths were hidden behind the shadows of silence. Buried in archives, locked away in private drawers, and banned from circulation. Some photographs from the 1950s reveal a side of the nation that the powerful wanted erased. These images were never meant to see the light of day because they spoke louder than words about injustice, inequality, and the unshakable dignity of black life in the face of relentless oppression. The 1950s are often remembered in nostalgic shades of pastel diners, Elvis on the radio, and smiling families gathered around black and white television sets. But outside those glossy advertisements of post-war prosperity existed another America that lived in segregation, humiliation, and constant struggle. And it was captured frame by frame in photos that made those who upheld the system deeply uncomfortable. One such image, rarely seen by the public, depicts a group of black children standing outside a public pool in the South, their faces pressed against the chain-link fence. On the other side, white children splash in the water under the summer sun. The photographer, a local reporter, was ordered never to publish it. The reasoning was simple: such an image would stir too much unrest. But in that frozen moment, you see not just exclusion, but longing, innocence denied, and the cruel absurdity of separate but equal. Their small fingers wrapped around the fence are a reminder that freedom was always just beyond reach. Another photograph, now hidden in dusty archives, shows a row of elderly black men being forced to move off a park bench by police officers. Their crime? Sitting in the wrong section of a public park. The men's hats in their laps, their weary eyes staring off into the distance, reveal something deeper than the incident itself. It was the weight of decades of degradation, the knowledge that their lives had been defined by rules meant to diminish them. Those images were banned because they revealed dignity that persisted even when stripped of rights. But not all of the hidden photos documented humiliation. Some celebrated resilience. One of the most powerful images from this forgotten vault shows a group of black women dressed in their Sunday best, marching arm in arm down a segregated street. Their heads are held high, Bibles in hand, while white onlookers jeer from the sidewalks. The police report that accompanied the photo labeled the women troublemakers. But what the lens captured was something more enduring than any insult: grace under fire. Those women carried themselves with a quiet power that told the world, "We will not bow." And then there were the photographs too painful to print at all. One, taken secretly by a young journalist, shows the aftermath of a lynching, not the gruesome spectacle that the world has too often seen, but the silence that followed. In it, a black mother kneels in the dirt beside a tree, clutching a bloodied shirt. Her face is not screaming, not raging, but carved with a grief so deep it is almost unrecognizable as human. That image was buried in a police archive, labeled sensitive, never published, because it revealed the true cost of America's racial violence. It told a truth no newspaper in the South dared to print, that every act of terror left behind families, wounds, and a sorrow that stretched across generations. But amid the pain, there were glimpses of life moments of joy that white society never wanted to acknowledge. Another rare photograph shows a crowded dance hall in Harlem in 1954. Young black couples twist and sway under colored lights, their laughter caught in motion, sweat glistening as music pulses through the room. To some, such a picture might have seemed harmless, but to segregationists it was dangerous. It showed a thriving culture, self-sustained, beautiful, and alive. It contradicted the myth of inferiority, and so it too was quietly forgotten. One particularly striking image captures a sit-in long before the movement reached national headlines. In a small southern town, 3 black teenagers sit defiantly at a whites-only lunch counter. Their eyes don't meet the camera. Instead, they fix forward with a stillness that radiates both fear and courage. Behind them, a waitress scowls, arms folded, refusing service. The teenagers' composure is almost statuesque, as though they already knew they were part of something history would one day honor. But in the 1950s, the local press was ordered never to print that image, fearing it might inspire others. The truth is, these photographs were banned not because they lied, but because they told the truth too clearly. They revealed cracks in the American dream, fractures in the story of post-war prosperity. They showed that while white America lived in the comfort of new suburbs, Black America lived in the shadows of exclusion, resisting in ways big and small. They showed children carrying signs demanding, "I am a man," mothers walking miles to work rather than ride segregated buses, fathers kneeling in prayer outside courthouses that denied them justice. Perhaps the most haunting of all these images is one that was never officially documented in the press. In 1955, after the brutal murder of Emmett Till, a photograph circulated secretly among Black families. It showed Mamie Till, Emmett's mother, at the funeral, her trembling hand resting on the edge of her son's casket. The open coffin revealed what hatred had done. That image, unlike the others, could not be suppressed. Forever, it traveled across the country, igniting outrage, inspiring action, and fueling a movement. But countless other photographs from that same era, moments of smaller injustices, quiet courage, and everyday resistance were quietly erased. To look at these hidden photos now is to see the truth America once tried to bury. They remind us that history is not only what is written in textbooks, but also what is concealed, denied, and silenced. They remind us that behind every statistic, every law, and every speech, there were faces of children peering through fences, of women walking with unshaken faith, of men bowed but not broken, of families stitched together by hope. And perhaps most importantly, these photographs remind us of the power of memory. Because once an image exists, it cannot truly be erased. It waits in the shadows, ready to be seen, ready to speak again. And when it does, it carries with it the voices of those who refuse to disappear. The power of these photographs lies not only in the injustices they expose, but also in the humanity they preserve. Each frame, though once silenced, now breathes with voices that history tried to mute. The 1950s were a decade of contradictions, a nation celebrating prosperity and modernity on one side, while on the other, an entire people were denied even the most basic dignity. These banned photographs bridge that gap, showing us the truth that official records refuse to carry. Consider the photograph of a young Black soldier returning from the Korean War in 1952. He wears his uniform proudly, medals pinned neatly to his chest, his stance tall with the pride of service. And yet, just behind him, a sign looms large, "Whites only." The soldier's face is caught in a half-smile, half-shadow, as if even he knew that his sacrifice abroad could not protect him from the insult at home. That image was deemed too political, too dangerous for circulation, for it asked a question that America did not want to answer. How could a country demand loyalty from men it refused to treat as equals? In another hidden frame, a classroom of Black children sits inside a rundown building with cracked walls and broken desks. The teacher, a woman in her 40s, holds a piece of chalk, her back straight, her eyes steady on her students. There is nothing pitiful about her expression. It is firm, resilient. She teaches as though the cracks in the wall do not exist, as though her students deserve the best the world can offer. And they do. That photograph tells two stories at once: the neglect of a system that underfunded Black schools, and the unshakable determination of teachers who refused to let their students be defined by inequality. It was buried because it shattered the myth that separate but equal provided fairness. Some photographs captured moments of raw defiance that threatened the very order of Jim Crow. One shows a Black father refusing to step off a sidewalk when confronted by a white man. His young daughter clutches his hand, eyes wide, watching as her father stands firm. No violence erupts, no words are exchanged, but the tension in the photo is electric. One man, holding his ground, teaching his child by example that dignity is not negotiable. That single act of resistance, though quiet, was powerful enough to unsettle those who wanted the status quo untouched. Then there were the images that celebrated beauty in ways society refused to acknowledge. A Black debutante ball in Chicago, 1956. Young women in white gowns glide across the floor, their gloves brushing against the polished wood, their smiles radiant. The image glows with grace and elegance, challenging the stereotypes that so often filled mainstream media. To those who upheld segregation, such photographs were threatening because they showed refinement, sophistication, and joy, qualities they tried to deny existed in Black life. So the photos stayed hidden. But perhaps the most haunting of all are the photographs that reveal the everyday humiliations too small for headlines, yet too heavy for a soul to carry alone. One photo shows a black woman in Mississippi being forced to drink from a fountain labeled "colored." She wears her work uniform, her hair neatly tied back, and she leans down not with shame, but with quiet defiance in her eyes, as if saying, "I see the lie you've built, but I will not let it define me." That single glance into the camera was enough to make censors uncomfortable. It told the truth of Jim Crow in one unflinching stare. Yet even as these photographs recorded pain, they also documented a culture blooming in spite of it. A hidden photo album from a black-owned newspaper in Detroit shows barbershops and beauty salons, buzzing with laughter, children riding bicycles through neighborhoods, and church congregations swaying in song. These were the places of refuge, the spaces of freedom carved out within oppression. To many, these photos seemed ordinary, but their very ordinariness was powerful. They proved that black life was not defined solely by suffering, but also by love, community, and joy. And then came the spark of revolution. In 1957, photographs circulated secretly of the Little Rock 99 black students walking stoically into Central High School as an angry mob of white faces contorted with rage behind them. The official newspapers softened those images, cropping the faces, choosing angles that made the confrontation seem less severe. But the uncensored photographs tell the whole story, children carrying books, shoulders tense with fear, while adults screamed venom in their ears. Those banned photos reveal the true courage it took just to walk into a classroom and the depth of hatred that tried to stop them. Other photographs captured leaders rising from the grassroots. A preacher named Martin Luther King Jr., not yet a national figure, stands in a church basement surrounded by neighbors. His hand is raised mid-speech, his eyes burning with conviction, while around him men and women lean forward, drawn to his words. The photo was taken before the Montgomery bus boycott made headlines, and it was considered unworthy of print by mainstream press. Yet, in hindsight, that single image captured the birth of a movement. It is one of the photographs history nearly lost. These images, hidden away for decades, carry a lesson that reaches far beyond the 1950s. They teach us that truth will always resist erasure. They teach us that dignity can be photographed, that resistance can be captured in a glance, a gesture, a moment frozen in time. They remind us that behind every struggle for justice are faces ordinary people made extraordinary by their refusal to disappear. What makes these photographs so powerful today is not only their historical value, but their emotional honesty. They strip away the sanitized narrative of the 1950s as a golden age and force us to confront the reality that while some enjoyed prosperity, others lived under the shadow of systemic oppression. Yet, within that shadow, there was light people who loved, laughed, created, and fought back. To see these photos now is to hear voices long silenced. The child behind the fence at the swimming pool, the soldier in uniform beneath the whites only sign, the mother kneeling beside the tree, the teenagers at the lunch counter. They speak not only of their own time, but to ours, reminding us that memory is resistance and truth, once seen, cannot be unseen. Perhaps that is why these photos were hidden, because they carried too much power. Power to unsettle, power to inspire, power to demand change. But photographs have a way of surviving. They pass hand to hand, hidden in shoeboxes, tucked in Bibles, rediscovered in dusty archives. And when they re-emerge, they do not simply show us the past. They demand that we reckon with it. The vault of banned photographs from the 1950s is not just a collection of images, it is a mirror reflecting both the cruelty and the courage that shaped America. A mirror that asks us, today, who we choose to be when faced with injustice. For every photograph that was hidden, there were countless more moments that went uncaptured, stories untold, lives unrecorded. But the ones we do have are enough. Enough to remind us that history is not only what is written by the powerful, but also what is remembered by the people. And so, as these photographs finally surface, as we look into the eyes of those who lived and resisted, we must ask ourselves, what truths are being hidden today? What images, what voices, what realities are being erased before they can reach us? The past whispers through these banned photos, but it also warns us, reminding us that silence is the tool of oppression and memory is the weapon of justice. In the end, these photographs, once buried in darkness, now shine with a brilliance that cannot be dimmed. They carry the dignity of a people who endured, resisted, and dreamed. They speak for the mothers, fathers, children, and elders who refused to vanish, who demanded to be seen. And through them, we see not only a past they tried to erase, but a truth that will endure forever.